Well, welcome Kingsway Youth to week 2. We really miss you guys. I know it's been a while since we've got to meet up personally, but really looking forward to getting to join you guys here with this video. We're going to be going over the second part of Matthew. And to my right, we have...
I'm Garrett Whitmer.
And I'm Jesse.
Awesome. And I'm really excited to have these guys here to talk about the second part of Matthew. But before we get into that, we're going to have a rap battle real quick. So I gave these two guys 2 words, and we're going to have you guys comment in the link below to see who won the rap battle. So Garrett's word was bicycle, and Jesse's word was skateboard. So let's see what you guys got.
All right, me first, or you?
Let it rip.
This is bicycle.
Yeah.
See you riding on your bicycle. Hunt you down on my tricycle. Don't need no motorcycle. Going too fast on my tricycle. Shave you down like an icicle. You'd be stuck sucking on a popsicle. As I ride away, shout my middle name, Michael.
That was pretty good. Pretty good. All right, Jesse.
It's not bad, Garrett. Skateboard is my word. Garrett, see you riding around on your skateboard. Arms hanging around like a bungee cord. Coming at you fast forward in my red Ford toward you. Big pumpkin long neck looking like a gourd.
Oh my goodness. That was pretty awesome. Yeah, so we're going to get into our video, but first comment, see who won the rap battle. We'll see you guys in a second.
No contest.
The Gospel according to Matthew. In the first video, we saw how Matthew introduced Jesus as the Messiah from the line of David, and as a new authoritative teacher like Moses, and also as Emmanuel, which in Hebrew means God with us. After Jesus announced and taught about the arrival of God's kingdom, and after he brought the kingdom into day-to-day life among the people of Israel, we saw that Jesus was accepted by many, but rejected by others, especially Israel's religious leaders, the Pharisees. And so the big question is, how is this conflict between Jesus and Israel's leaders going to play itself out? The next large section, chapters 14 through 20, explore all the different expectations people have about the Messiah. So Jesus keeps healing sick people, and twice he even miraculously provides food for these huge crowds in the desert. One's made up of Jewish people, and the other is a non-Jewish crowd. And this sign, it's very similar to what Moses did for Israel in the wilderness. And so all these people are excited about Jesus. They think he's the great prophet and the Messiah, but not the religious leaders. Their view of the Messiah is built on passages like Psalm 2 or Daniel chapter 2 about a victorious Messiah who's going to deliver Israel and defeat the pagan oppressors. And from their point of view, Jesus, he's a false teacher. He's making blasphemous claims about himself. And so there are stories here about them increasing their opposition, hatching a plan to kill him. And so in response, Jesus, he withdraws, and he begins teaching his closest disciples what it means for him to be Israel's Messiah, because it is not what anybody expects. So Jesus asks his disciples, chapter 16, he says, "Who do you all say that I am?" And Peter comes up with the right answer, it seems. He says, "Well, you're the Messiah. You're the Son of the living God." But then it becomes clear that Peter's thinking about a king who's going to reign victoriously through military power. And Jesus challenges Peter, saying that, yes, I am going to become king, but through a different way. And so Jesus starts to teach on themes from the prophet Isaiah, who said that the Messianic king would suffer and die for the sins of his own people. And so Jesus, he was positioning himself as a messianic king who reigns by becoming a servant and who would lay down his life for Israel and the nations. Well, Peter and the disciples, they mostly just don't get it. And so Jesus enters into the 4th block of teaching, followed by a series of teachings after that. And these are all about the upside-down nature of Jesus' messianic kingdom, which turns upside down all of our value systems. So in the community of the servant king, you gain honor by serving others. And instead of getting revenge, you forgive and do good to your enemies. And in Jesus' kingdom, you gain true wealth by giving your wealth away to the poor. To follow the servant Messiah, you must become a servant yourself. In the next section, we watch the 2 kingdoms clash, Jesus' kingdom and that of Israel's leader. Jesus comes to Jerusalem for Passover riding in on a donkey, and the crowds are hailing him as the Messiah. And Jesus immediately marches into the courtyard of the temple, and he creates this huge disruption that brings the daily sacrifices to a halt. His actions speak louder than words here. As Israel's king, Jesus was asserting his royal authority over the temple, the place where God and Israel met together. And in Jesus' view, the temple was compromised by the hypocrisy of Israel's leaders. And so here he's challenging their authority, and naturally, they're deeply offended. And so they try to trap Jesus and shame him in public debate, and they fail. So they end up just determining to have him killed. In response, Jesus delivers his final block of teaching. He first offers this passionate critique of the Pharisees and their hypocrisy, and then he weeps over Jerusalem and its rejection of God and his kingdom. Then Jesus withdraws with the disciples, and he starts telling them what's going to happen. He's going to be executed by these leaders, but in doing so, they're going to create their own demise, because instead of accepting Jesus' way of the peaceful kingdom, they're going to take the road of revolt against Rome, and so Jerusalem and its temple are going to be destroyed. But, Jesus says, that is not the end of the story. He's going to be vindicated after his death by his resurrection. And one day, he'll return and set up his kingdom over all nations. And so in the meanwhile, the disciples need to stay alert and stay committed to just announcing Jesus and his kingdom and spreading the good news. And so with all of that ringing in the disciples' ears, the story comes to its climax. That night, Jesus takes the disciples aside and he celebrates a Passover meal with them. The Passover retells the story of Israel's rescue from slavery through the death of the Passover lamb. And then Jesus takes the bread and the wine from this meal as new symbols, showing that his coming death would be a sacrifice that would redeem his people from slavery to sin and evil. After the meal, Jesus is arrested. He's put on trial before the Sanhedrin, a council of Jewish leaders, and they reject his claim to be the Messiah. They charge him with blasphemy against God. Then Jesus is brought before the Roman governor Pilate, and he thinks Jesus is innocent, but he gives in to the pressure from the Jewish leaders, and he sentences Jesus to death by crucifixion. So Jesus is led away by Roman soldiers and crucified. Now, you'll notice right here in this section that just like Matthew did in the opening chapters, he increases the number of references to the Old Testament. He's trying to show that Jesus' death was not a tragedy or a failure. Rather, it was the surprising fulfillment of all of the old prophetic promises. Jesus came as the servant Messiah, spoken of by Isaiah. He was rejected by his own people, but instead of judging them, he is judged on their behalf, bearing the consequences of their sin. So the crucifixion scene, it comes to a close, and Jesus' body is placed in a tomb. But the book ends with a surprising twist, the last chapter. The disciples, they discover on Sunday morning that Jesus' tomb is empty. And then all of a sudden people start seeing Jesus alive from the dead. And the book concludes with the risen Jesus giving a final teaching called the Great Commission. Jesus says that he is now the true king of the world. And so he sends his disciples out to all nations with the good news that Jesus is Lord and that anyone can join his kingdom by being baptized and by following his teachings. And echoing all the way back to his name, Emmanuel, God with us, from chapter 1, Jesus' last words in the book to his disciples are, "I will be with you." It's a promise of Jesus' presence until the day he finally returns. And that's the gospel according to Matthew.
So we just heard from the second half of Matthew, and really good stuff. And we're going to be talking about the different expectations about who the Messiah was and who Jesus is, and kind of what the Pharisees thought and what he actually came to do. And so some of those, if you guys have your Bibles, we're going to be going out of Psalm chapter 2 and also Isaiah 53 are going to be the two main ones that we're going to be talking through. So if you have your Bibles, get those out. And Garrett's here going to talk just a little bit about what the Pharisees thought and kind of the scriptures that they tied everything into.
Yeah, so the Pharisees, they believe that when the Messiah came, or when he comes, he will look and they'll see him as this all-powerful king, that they would that you would think of a king as like this physical, like I am like a manly like king, and like I rule over all this. And in a way, they're right because, or they are right because God is all powerful, and He is these things, and He can do whatever He wants because He's all powerful, and He's God. And so, of course, you would think that the chosen king would be super powerful, and they weren't wrong at all. But what they expected was Him to look powerful and be powerful, and then and it talks about like Him being anointed and like all these things, and it's so true, like what Psalms 2 has to say, that He is powerful, but it's just in a different way than they expected. And it was like in a way that it actually is more powerful when you have powers but you don't place yourself above other people. And He came down as this idea of what they talked about in the video as a suffering servant, that He was going to serve these people, that everyone, that He came down and He didn't cling to like his powers, and He instead like gave them up and became like a slave, and He came a servant to everyone. And that's way more powerful than anything else than you could be. That they didn't look like they were talking about in the video. It wasn't physical people like attracted to Him. It was like, no, like this is who He was, and this is how He fulfilled the Old Testament throughout this. And then you with
the idea of that upside down kingdom, that Jesus was kind of the opposite of what we expected almost, is actually a super practical idea. In Jesus' teaching, He makes that very clear when He talks about revenge. And He says, rather than giving revenge, we should give forgiveness. And rather than swinging back when we're hit, we should offer the other cheek. And rather than storing up possessions, we should find true wealth in giving. I think that's so cool. And I feel like we're really missing something when we don't look at how practical the upside down kingdom was. That's something that is actually super relevant to our lives today.
Yeah. So to kind of wrap up what they're both saying is that we are, as Christians, to be Christ-like. And so if Christ was to come down as this like supernatural, powerful being, king, to wipe everything out, I don't think that's an expectation we could live up to. Other than what He did do, coming down as a humble servant, really showed us how to live a full life. And it's really an amazing thing to see, like how you can kind of misconstrue that, because God is powerful. God can do these amazing things, but yet He wants us to be humble. He wants us, and He showed that by bringing His Son, who is humble, who was self-sacrificing, and basically just showing the ultimate love. And so that's really the life that Jesus led. That's the life that we're celebrating here this coming Easter. So really do miss you guys. It's been kind of a bummer not to be able to get together, but we just want to encourage you too, if you need anything, please go to kingswaymo.com, and then under that contact us section, you're going to see a form, and you can fill that form out. Let us know if you need anything. Please go to kingswaymo.com to contact us, and we'd be happy to help you out. Other than that, we'll see you guys next week. See ya.
Sweet.